Please tell us, who were your heroes when you were growing up? Who influenced you to want to play music yourself?
The first person absolutely was Little Richard.
Yeah.
You know, the first time I heard Long Tall Sally, I was in the 7th grade. I went to they used to have a Friday night dance.
What city was this?
This was in Royal Oak, Michigan.
Oh, wow.
Okay, and they called it bogey, boy, girl, bogey. But we went like 7 o'clock at night for the kids. We were in the 7th grade. I walked into the gymnasium of the school, and they were playing on the PA system, Long Tall Sally by Little Richard. I heard that, and I said, oh my God, what is that? What wonderful music, you know.
Yeah,
So,
just the vibrancy, the
just that
electricity.
energy, absolutely. So that just excited me, you know. I hadn't started playing guitar yet or anything. I was just a kid, but that and also in the cafeteria at lunch, they used to pipe the radio over the PA system in the lunchroom so you could hear music. And I heard Elvis Presley for the first time. So between those two guys, Elvis and Little Richard, that's what I knew I had to be in music in some way. And then when I was like 15, 16 years old, I went to see my first rock and roll band, a group called the Eldorados. This was in Pontiac, Michigan. And I was with my girlfriend. And I was so excited seeing this rock and roll band, 2 Gibson Les Pauls, gold Les Pauls, and these guys were wearing blue smoking jackets and it looked so cool, you know. And that's when I wanted to be in a rock band. I knew I had to be in a rock band. 2 years later, I was playing lead guitar for that band. Because when I got my guitar and I started practicing, I got really good really fast.
So you kept following the band, and then they had a
and
member change, or
member
you knew?
change, and I was playing really good. It was only 2 years, but I had been practicing like 10 hours a day. You know, I had the guitar in my hand every minute.
Yeah.
And I got really good really fast. I had a natural ability for it. So they asked me to play one weekend, and because they needed somebody to fill in, and I got the gig. So that was great. I was the lead guitar player in the Eldorados.
And they were touring regionally there in Michigan?
And it was like so exciting because they were like my dream band, and there I was. So.
Wow. Now, Detroit was obviously such a great musical city. Tell us about the excitement back then with, of course, the
you know,
Motown
the thing about Detroit is Detroit has historically, really, if you go back to like the 1940s, 50s, you name a decade, and there are major stars and major music coming out of Detroit, you know. From Diana Washington to Kenny Burrell, jazz guitar player, to Eminem, to Bob Seger, I mean, you name it. It's got a rock era, it's got all Motown. I mean, Detroit is like just a hotbed of musical talent, and always has been. The era that I grew up in, the 1960s, I had a band called Frost, a very famous band in Detroit, in the whole region. And we were like the top draw of everyone. Bob Seger and Ted Nugent, all those guys, they're all friends of mine. I grew up in the same era as Seger, Nugent, Mitch Ryder. I had in the Eldorados. Eventually we were in a club, and Mitch Ryder came in for 2 weeks and sang with us. And that was one of his first gigs before he formed Billy Lee and the Rivieras, which became Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels. So you know, my history goes way back. Because I'm an old guy. But, you know, I worked with Little Richard, I worked with Roy Orbison, I worked with Jerry Lee Lewis, you know, on some of their first tours. You know, my band backed them up on dates and on TV shows. And, so I've been involved historically with rock and roll since like the beginning, really.
I mean, after hearing Little Richard and then later playing with him, did you pursue that, or did somebody come and say, do you want to play with
Well, what it was, I was producing a record, and the guys in the band wanted somebody to, like Little Richard, to play piano. Only we could have that. And I said, he lives at the Continental Hyatt House, just a couple miles over. Why don't you go over there and see if you can talk him into coming and playing? So I sent these young guys over, and they went and they talked to him, and he said yes. So here's my idol. He's coming to play on a session that I'm producing. And he did show up. It was 3 hours later. But he takes time, but he comes in his
Better
white
late than
stretch
never.
limo, all dressed in silk and all perfumed up. I mean, just completely the huge rock and roll star that he is. And he played on my session, and it was fantastic.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What was
It was
it?
actually a session that I was doing with Bob Ezrin, but I was the on-line producer at that moment. So
No, but what project was that?
what's that?
What project was that
That
recording?
was the Throbs.
Throbs.
Yeah. It's called the Throbs for Geffen Records.
Now, was it through Bob that you later then played with Lou Reed? Or what was the connection to
Well,
Lou?
Lou, I was actually called to audition for Lou Reed at one time, and I went down and played, and the leader of the band said, "You're not right for this." So I didn't get the gig, but then it was either Lou or his manager called me later and said, we want you to put together a band for them. They were impressed, but the leader of the band was controlling everything at that time. And he said, I guess maybe because I played better than he did, he didn't really, he didn't give me the gig, but Dennis Katz did. He was Lou's manager. He called me up. And so the rest is history there. I started putting that together with Bob, because Bob was going to record Berlin.
Yeah.
And I had just met Steve Hunter. Actually, I met him a little bit earlier, but in Florida. I was playing in a club in Florida with Ursa Major, and Steve Hunter came in to the club. And I invited him to come up and jam with me. So we played for a couple, 2 or 3 hours. It was magic with me and Hunter, right away. And so this whole band got put together for Lou Reed for the Rock and Roll Animal album. We rehearsed at Tanglewood up in Massachusetts, and we did our first concert there, and then we left for Europe immediately. So we were doing a European tour after just 2 weeks of rehearsal. But the band was so phenomenal. From the first note we played, it was absolute beauty, So
So it was the chemistry of the group.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody was excelling
everybody
and
was
clicking
excelling,
and open.
and everyone played so great, and that magic of me and Steve Hunter on guitars right from the beginning. And we actually sat down and decided that we were going to split all the lead solos 50-50, and the rhythm parts would be 50-50. So neither one of us would be like the featured guitar player. It would be the two of us, which really worked out great for us, because we got this reputation. And
Like a duo.
yeah, like a duo. Steve and Tyler called us what do you call us? The Terrible Twins, or something. He gave us a name. He thought we were the best tandem rock and roll guitar players in the country. So.
That's great.
And it was just a phenomenal time, the 70s, 1970s for me was just phenomenal. So was the 60s, really.
Yeah, I mean, bands were making a new album every 6 months, 9 months. It just,
I was
it seemed
writing all
very
the time.
prolific time.
I'm still writing all the time, but, putting out CDs and stuff is different now. It's not like it was then.
No. But tell us about joining Alice Cooper Band. Obviously, he had the big change where.
Well, I started
his
playing
band-
on his records from Schools Out.
Okay.
Okay, so I was there at that album. I played on that album. And so they always called me in to play guitar on his records. And Alice, they loved the way I write songs. So at some point they called me and wanted me to come in and become Alice's co-writer. and lead guitar player, leader of his band, really. I was kind of like the band leader, the band, whatever you call it. And I was just going to make a solo album at that time. I had like 28 songs written. So I took those songs to Alice, and we took music from some of them and made them into Alice Cooper songs. And I joined up, and you know, they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. I've been heading for a solo album, but I decided to put it aside. And this was late 1974. So really I was involved with Alice from 1975 on, but I've been playing. I played on School's Out, and I played on Muscle of Love, and I forget what all that, $1 Billion Babies and all of that. The first song I wrote with Alice Cooper was actually called I Love Is Dead, which I got no credit for on the album, but I did write the song with him. And it just turned out to be such a great relationship with Alice and I. You know, we wrote songs together for like 10 years. You know, I toured with him and played. I was his lead guitar player for many, many years. It was a great association. You know.
He's a great down-to-earth guy, nice person.
I love Alice. He's a great guy. He's a friend. I mean, he's definitely Alice. He's definitely into himself. I mean, he's a superstar, so he's got to be. You know, he's got to have that kind of drive toward his own career. But we're friends, and we don't see each other. We live in the same town now. I mean, I live out in Phoenix. He lives in Phoenix.
He does a lot of touring.
He tours. He's on the road 9 months out of the year. So, and I've been getting really busy the last couple of years, doing, you know, with my book and with my band, and you know, doing different kind of charity events and doing radio and television, doing a lot of interviews. I've been really busy, and my name is getting bigger again, which I'm really happy about. But and now I'm doing this thing for St. Jude, so
yeah,
you know, which has turned out just absolutely beautiful.
Now, what advice would you give to that young guitarist coming up today, that band? What do they need to concentrate on and avoid to really have a shot?
What they really have to do is not make records trying to sound like what's current. Just make your own music. Just let it flow. Learn your instrument. Really, I mean, it's the same old thing. You want to get to Carnegie Hall, you practice. Well, the same with guitar. You have to be playing it all the time. And if you're going to be a songwriter, you have to be writing. But you need to write from your own core feelings and your own influences, and not worry about what's current, because if you make a record that sounds just like what's on the radio today, by the time you get that out into the public, it's going to be 10 months or a year from now.
You can't follow, you got to lead.
Yeah, you have to lead, and you have to lead. Just the whole essence of leading is just being yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and eventually, if you have enough talent and enough dedication, you know, music will come toward you. They'll discover you, in a sense.
Sure.
But the only way you can do that is by being yourself. So for young guitar players, never put it down. Always play it. Get better, get better. Don't necessarily copy anyone, but you can certainly take an influence of music from people.